Hello mathematicians! Today we are going to learn how to round to any place and expand on our previous knowledge of rounding. For this lesson you will need a sharpened pencil with an eraser and your guided notes sheet. You'll follow along and you'll fill in the spaces as you're prompted in the video. If you are missing either of these things, please raise a quiet hand and I will come to you and give you what you need. Okay, so let's review. What is rounding? Well, rounding makes a number simpler. So we'll write this in. But keeps its value close to what it was. Okay, so for example, if you have $4.75, you could round that $5 to the nearest dollar, right? So you have the 4 in the ones place there. And we look at the 7 and we say 5 or above, give it a shove. We know 7 is a larger number than 5. So we are going to increase our 4 by 1 and that makes that $5. So we could essentially round dollars to about $5. So why round? Rounding makes a number easier to use. So write that in. All right, so let's review. Let's round 257 to the nearest tens place. Okay, so we remember that the 7 is in the ones place, the 5 is in the tens place, and the 2 is in the hundredths place. So let's go ahead and underline that 5 that's in the tens place. Let's put an arrow above the number next to it, which just happens to be 7. Now we have to ask the questions. Is 7 5 or above? And the answer is yes, 7 is larger than 5. So we're going to give that 5 a shove. And the number will be 260. Let's circle our answer because we are super confident that that is the correct answer. If you do not understand this, please raise a quiet hand and someone will come assist you. All right, so let's try another one. Round 3,596 to the nearest thousands place. So the first thing we're going to do is identify which number is in the thousands place. And we know that that 3 is in the thousands place. And we're going to underline that just to make sure. We're going to look at its neighbor, which happens to be a 5. And we'll ask ourselves, is it 5 or above, or is it 4 or below? Well, it is in fact 5. So we're going to go ahead and give that 3 a shove to a 4. 3 plus 1 equals 4. And then we're going to change everything after it to zeros. And notice I wanted to make sure that I had my comma in there as well. All right, so an important tool that you'll need while learning how to round in all places is your decimal place value chart, which I have included in these guided notes. You'll need to use this just until you have it memorized. And you'll notice that this here is the decimal place. Okay, so there's your decimal. You're familiar with the ones, the tens, the hundreds, and the thousands. And the new things that we're learning are the tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10,000ths, 100,000ths, and the millionths. So one thing that you might notice is that the words change a little bit. Here you have ones, tens, you just have an S, right? And that's the same with the tens, the hundreds, and the thousands. Okay, so basically it's just like we learned in foundations with that added S. But here, if you look at the tens, and go ahead and circle that S on the tens. If you look at the tens here, what do you notice different about the word tens and tenths? So you noticed the difference is the THS. And if you notice here, there's a THS at the end of all of the words, the math words or number words here, after this decimal place. So here you have ones, tens, hundreds, thousands. But here after the decimal place you have tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10,000ths, and so on. Okay, so that's an important thing to remember because you're going to have to identify which place you are rounding to. So let's try a problem together. All right, so it's asking us here to round 25.65 to the nearest tenths. So we're going to reference our chart here. Which one is the tenths? We know the tenths is the first value after, or the first digit after that decimal place. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and underline that number. And that would be the 6. And we're going to look at the neighbor next to 6 to identify how we're going to round that. Okay, and I know you know how to do this. 5 or above, give it a shove. It is 5, so you're going to shove that 6 up to the next number. 6 plus 1 equals 7. Okay, so the final number here that you're going to get is 25.70. Anything after changes to a 0. Now, because this is after the decimal place, technically, if you wrote 25.7, that would also be correct. But for now, let's go ahead and stick with the 0 just to make sure that we are checking our answers and that we are doing the right thing. Okay? Let's move on to the next one. All right, so it's asking us to round 200.37327 to the nearest hundredths. Let's look at our handy dandy chart here. Hundredths is the second digit after the decimal place here. So we're going to go ahead and underline the second one, okay? So here we have the hundredths place. Now, something that should be noted, it's very, very important, is that there's not a oneths place, okay? So if we look here, there's ones, tens, hundreds. It doesn't start from ones after the decimal place. It goes to tenths. So there is no oneths place. So the hundredths place is the second digit after the decimal place. All right. So we're going to look at the neighbor. And the neighbor is a 3. So remember, is it 5 or above? No, that means it's 4 or below. Leave it alone, right? So we're going to keep the 200 the same. We're not even on that side of the decimal place. And we are going to keep the 3 the same because we're actually going to the hundredths place, right, which is the 7. We decided that 3 was below 5, so we're going to leave that 7 alone, and we're going to change those other 3 values to a 0. And you have successfully rounded 200.37327 to the nearest hundredths. Nice job. Let's go ahead and get practicing. I'm so proud of you.